This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Thursday, September 19th, 2024, and I've got the most excellent Tom Merritt here as my guest this week. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm good, Miriam. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. It's been a long time coming. I've been wanting to have you since you pretty much went independent. It's like, how long ago is that now?
It's like 11 years now. Yeah. It's been a minute.
Yeah. So anyway, well, here we are. And it's been Apple week last week. We covered all the announcements with my guest then. But the reviews are out now. I don't have the devices. I'm not in Apple's good graces to get devices. I just, like everyone else, have to buy my stuff. But you're in the same boat. But I think we can kind of meta review, right? Like we can kind of go like, hey, I would love to hear your thoughts actually about what you think of these iPhones now that you've had a chance to digest last week's event, and maybe you've been influenced by some of these reviews. I mean, I know I usually get a little bit biased by reading them. What are your thoughts?
So when the announcement was made, I always am amused by the fact that every time Apple makes an announcement, everybody says it was disappointing because everybody brings their expectations up, to as sky high levels that they almost never can meet. But I did think this was one of the more, I don't know if disappointing is fair, but one of the more lower key announcements. It didn't seem like there was a lot going on other than Apple Intelligence, and a little disappointing that you're not going to get it till October. Although I do also think people were overreacting. Like once it arrives in October, then it'll be you like it or you don't. And everyone will forget there was a delay. But these reviews were surprisingly positive. Now, they're very, very positive about the camera, and that is not as big of a deal for me. So I suspect that reviewers overrepresent camera enthusiasts to the general populace, but it did seem like camera and battery life were the two big things that people really were excited about with the reviews, and it did make me feel a little like, okay, maybe I was a little harder on it than I should have been, but I still don't think if you have a 15, you need to be rushing out to get the 16.
No, I agree with you. I think in general, all you said is pretty much on point. I think for me, the reason I think the cameras are so, important to a lot of reviewers is because that's what we hear from the users. Cameras, and battery life are the two things that they really care about. And I think, for us phone enthusiasts, I'm talking about myself, my audience, maybe you, I don't know how much of a phone enthusiast you are. But I feel like we look at it differently because we get to also look at the Android ecosystem, things like folding phones, and we look at things like fast charging that Apple is just starting to get. And, Samsung, same thing. Their phones are really slow charging compared to the competition, like what you see from OnePlus in the US. But even like all the Chinese makers out there, they're all running around 100 watts on their flagship. And that's kind of like par for the course. They have 50-watt wireless charging, and it's par for the course, and that's not a priority, I think, for people here because I think they've never experienced it. So, but battery life is a priority for everyone, everywhere. So is cameras. And I think, it's the same reason why the iPhone 16 and the 14 and the 15 and every iPhone since ProMotion, the 120 hertz thing became available on the high-end phones. That's why they don't have it, because Apple looks at it as, this is not a feature our users are requesting unless they're pros. And I personally can't wrap my head around that. I have like a nothing CMF phone here, the $200 phone that is absolutely a superb device. And it's $200 and it's got a better display than the iPhone 16. Here it is for the Patreons. This screen is insanely good. It's 120 hertz. It's 1080p. It's OLED. It's got incredible viewing angle. Like I'm in bright, like I'm facing a window with view of the ocean right now. So I'm like in the sunlight, basically.
Oh yeah. No, that's good.
2000 nits. It's the same as the iPhone. So I think when you see that for $200, you're like, for me, it's hard to say, like, how can Apple decide not to have 120 hertz on a regular iPhone, even if it's not a must-have feature. So I think that's the thing. Like, this going back to what you said about cameras, to you it doesn't matter, but I think to people it does. And obviously people don't care about the high refresh unless they've experienced it and they can see it. Some people can't. I personally find it a little smoother, but I can't like point my finger and say this is necessarily better because I'm old. I don't know. What about you? Can you see?
I think that says something about the iPhone's target audience right there. Yeah, I've got a Pixel Fold, and I really don't in day-to-day use notice a difference.
It's not your first 120 hertz display.
No, though, it's not even the first I've had though.
Right.
And I think the first time I picked up a 120 hertz phone, I was looking for the difference, right? So you're like, oh yeah, I think it's smoother. And I don't know if that's a placebo effect or not, but it just goes away when you're using it all the time.
If you film at slow motion, you'll see the difference. Like there's no doubt that I think it's not so much that the flicker or anything. For me, it's more like the fluidity of the scrolling and animations. And especially on the iPhone, because, Android phones can be laggy sometimes. So you might have 120 hertz refresh, but then your UI isn't running at the full frame rate because, something's preventing that.
Mm-hmm.
On iOS, generally everything is so slick, and that's why I think if you're used to a pro and you're back to a non-pro, you notice it simply because the animations feel less fluid. And I think it's not like something you can say like you have to put them side by side. Like you can't just explicitly, as some people I think can detect it, but I can't unless it's side by side. Then I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah. I also think that we are getting to a world where people are hanging onto their phones 2 years and even 3 fairly regularly, and some people longer, of course, there always have been, but the middle of the bell curve is now 2 to 3 years, in which case these new versions of the phones really can just be spec upgrades and be a compelling upgrade for somebody who's on a 13, right? Because there's such a big jump from that.
Yeah, for sure. I think, first of all, I'm a big fan of Allison's reviews on The Verge, and she's a friend of mine, but I also feel like if you're buying an iPhone today and you're not like us, content creator or whatever, and you need the best of the best, I think that the 16 is one of the most compelling iPhones in recent times. Like, every year you kind of look at it and go like, could I live with for me, it's like, could I live with the base model, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this year I could totally live with the base model. Like the telephoto and the 120 hertz are the only two things that I miss. And
that supposed 25-hour battery life on the Max Plus or the Pro Max. I mean, yeah.
Well, the way I look at that is, I think you're right. That makes sense. It's like video playback. Like, how does it actually, help you when you're like, recording video and taking photos for, Instagram or whatever, if you're a creator or YouTuber, right? I think for me, it's really like, I'm on Android every day, like a Pixel Fold right now, the new one. I was on a Pixel 8 Pro. Like my daily is always a Pixel or Nexus. So I was on 8 Pro. Now I'm a 9 Fold. I finally switched to a folding phone for the first time as a full-time thing. The OnePlus Open last year was the phone that made me really understand that that's what I wanted. But as much as I loved it, I still had my Pixel in my pocket. So I was kind of dual Android, which I always have multiple phones because I'm reviewing them, but having 2 primaries was really weird for me. And so combining them into the Pixel 9 Pro Fold has been kind of awesome. No, I'm not going to lie. But that being said, my iPhone is in my bag for content creation. I use it for all video creation content I do, unless it's like I have to capture the moment instantly and then I pull out my Pixel and do a video quickly. But like if I'm planning something, if I'm attending something, or if I'm recording a video at home, like my big thing has always been to do all my content creation with phones, even from the early days. So all my product photography is done with phones. All my videos are shot with phones, et cetera, et cetera. So iPhone 15 Pro Max is what I have right now. And I hadn't upgraded in 4 years. I had a 12 before that, or 3 years, I guess. But now I'm actually thinking of getting the 16 Pro, not Max, the smaller one, because it has the better camera. Finally. And I don't need necessarily a big phone in terms of size and weight because it's in my bag. It's like just, it's not in my pocket. I don't really care.
And if you want to try out Apple Intelligence, it's on the base brand too, not just the Pros. Yeah.
But I'm looking at getting the base Pro while the 16 Pro, not the Max, simply because the cameras are the same now. And I am as a photography fan or mobile photography fan, I'm very keen on trying out this button, right? This thing and those styles, whatever the thing, style tones, whatever they're called.
Oh yeah, like the tone mapping. They just call it tone, I guess. But yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like, I mean, I know you're not super into photography on phones, but I have you, like, you probably saw Nilai's review, and I think he's right. Like the flattening of mobile photography because of HDR and computational photography is a real thing. Like I've even noticed on pixels, like pixels used to be more contrasty. Now they're less contrasty, and I like contrasty. And I think, those Chinese phones for the last 2 or 3 years, all of them, Xiaomi, Oppo, which is OnePlus, all of them now have a mode where you can select, because they all have these partnerships with Zeiss and Hasselblad and Leica and whatever. They all offer these features that let you set kind of like the tone, literally the tone, not tone mapping, but the actual tone of the experience. Like how does this photo feel to you? Does it feel like kind of like Instagram filters on steroids, basically?
Totally. Yeah. We were saying the same thing on DTNS. It's like it's fun. It's fun to use the filters for a while, but at some point you just want to go back to like, I just want to see the photo that I took. And that sounds kind of what Nilay was saying in his review.
Absolutely.
It lets you do that. Yeah.
But at the same time, the defaults are so flat now that, for example, on the Leica phones, the Xiaomi phones all have Leica branding, the high-end ones. And it's not just a brand, like they actually worked close together. Back in the days when Leica was working with Huawei and Huawei wasn't banned, they flew us out to Germany to talk to the Leica engineers about what they're doing. And it's actually really impressive. It's like the algorithms are worked on together by the two companies to create the look and feel of a Leica, camera. And in addition to that, the lenses are spec'd by Leica, not manufactured, but spec'd. And the sensors are also spec'd by Leica. So Sony makes most of the sensors, Samsung as well these days. And they would get bespoke, at least Huawei would get bespoke tweaks to the sensors made based on Leica specs. So I think a lot of that's happening with Xiaomi now. And I notice it because when I fire up a Xiaomi phone, the first thing it does before the first time you run the camera up, in addition to asking you if you can save location data, it tells you here the 2 or 3, generally it's not more than 2 and 3, like styles or like vibes that are traditional Leica vibes. Pick the one you want. You can change it at any time. And it describes them a bit. It says this one's more contrasty. This one's more kind of like on the warmer colors. And, I think Apple kind of had that in the previous phone. Like you kind of could select 2 modes, I think. But now they've gone all crazy with the tone stuff. And I'm kind of curious about it. I'm not sure I'd use that on a day-to-day basis. I think I'd probably set it to what I like and then go, right?
Yeah, especially because by all accounts, that camera control button, which is not a button, is a little fiddly. It seems like every reviewer I read agreed that it was better than using the volume button to do a shot, that they liked it for that. But otherwise, it was, you had to use 2 hands to make the best use of the touch, swiping, and that they were occasionally swiping it by accident and causing problems. So, it is feel a little like maybe you're holding it wrong sort of situation there.
Well, I feel for me, what I said this on last week's show, the thing that surprised me is that we saw this on the base model. Again, the base model got a lot of love this year. But I question it too, because like have you observed the average person using their phone? Like not us nerds who like to take landscape photos and want a camera button, right? Like, of course we want a camera button. Xperia gave us a double detent or dual stage button. Lumia had that back in the day. Nokia phones had it. It's not a new thing, but I think what Apple's done there is very clever, adding a capacitive sensor on there so you can swipe and making the half press basically haptic. The full press is still a real button. Interesting, it's a kind of a hybrid because I guess they don't have enough surface area or a big enough haptic motor to put in there because my first thought was, why don't you do both completely haptic?
Yeah, right.
Like, but I think that's the problem. They don't have the surface area or, on the trackpad on a Mac, it's a lot easier because the Taptic engine is like literally the size of half of my finger here. Like if you take it apart, you don't have that kind of space in the phone. But to me, the base 16 having that is weird because even the Pro, like a lot of creators are doing vertical video or vertical photos. Like then, like, how does it do it with 2 hands? You want to be like this. And then you're using your thumb, maybe if you're right-handed, or your index if you're left-handed. And then like it gets really awkward. I don't, to me, this control seems like, in a way, I commend Apple for trying to tell people, take horizontal photos, right? Take horizontal video.
Good luck with that.
It's not going to happen. You know that, right?
Yeah. Not until TikTok gets banned. And even then.
Yeah, exactly. And in the same way as iPhone users are completely addicted to iMessage to the point where good news, RCS is finally on the iPhone. And I've started messaging with some of my iPhone friends
same.
and seen the RCS thing, which makes me very happy.
Jumped into every group chat that had an Android member in it. We're like, okay, let's try it. Let's do it.
Finally.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think the average user is going to stay using the touchscreen for their phone stuff. They're already used to that experience, right? Like changing modes and stuff. Like I don't see them adopt. So that's why I'm like, not only is it weird that Apple added a button, because it's unlike Apple.
Because they're very unbuttoned.
Right?
Yeah.
They did it on the base model. And then on top of that, is it really useful? Like, I mean, for the average person, like in the same.
It feels over-engineered to me. It feels like the average person will use it as a button if they use it at all. And yeah, there'll be some pro users that mess with it. But I think from what I'm seeing, and I can't wait to try it out myself, a lot of people are going to find it easier to just do the settings on the touchscreen.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it at all. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm a little torn. I feel like it's like Apple's kind of trying to chase some novelty to kind of reignite sales. Like it's as they feel a little lost to me. And I still respect it. Like I love the tech. I think it's very cool. But I think if you zoom back and you look at the industry, you're like, are you looking for some maybe even gimmick to kind of give your audience to kind of like get them to buy a new phone? Like, to me, what the real innovation is on the iPhones this year, really, ultimately, as a phone nerd and a camera nerd, is 4K 120 for video, and it's the higher resolution ultra wide, which lets you zoom in a little more between 0.5 and 1 without losing, because of you can pixel bin a little more and stuff.
I'm looking forward to that because I do a lot of concert photos just for myself, and I'm always having problems in that exact situation. So I can't wait to have that
and I think
solved.
I shoot a lot of video, even product video, with the ultra wide for the macro stuff, and of course, the quality isn't quite there. So like on the 15 Pro Max, so maybe that's why I'm maybe thinking of going to a 16 Pro non-max, because I can save a bit of money and I don't need the big screen because I only use it occasionally. But it's also great that they've got the 5X telephoto. At the same time, most of the competition's 5X telephotos, including folding phones, are 50, 48, 64 megapixel now. Like in the Chinese phone world, this is totally normal stuff. Even Samsung has a 50 megapixel 5X lens on the S24 Ultra. So like, where is Apple? Why do I have to wait yet another year for that to happen? Like it's annoying to me that they're so incremental and so slow. And like finally, now somebody's proven this. Finally, 45 watt is supported for charging. So if you have enough, like you plug in a 65 watt Anker charger into your iPhone, it will at one point peak at 45 watt. And that's really good news. But again, look at everyone else out there, 100, 80, like just totally normal, right? Like,
well, Apple's argument is that those are features that the high-end nerds like us think we want, but don't really need. And they add them when we need them. I think they're right more often than they're wrong on those sorts of things. Maybe 120 hertz is a good example of that, but fast charging, come on, who does not want the faster charging?
Well, that's my point. Like my point is that it's not for the average person who charges their phone every night. A lot of us do that. I think once you start using a phone that has the fast charging, you no longer you quickly realize I'm no longer bound to charging my phone every night.
I don't have to worry about it.
Charging my phone on demand, kind of like an EV. Unless you like, for me, I have had EVs for 6 years, but I can't charge them at home. And I've learned to live with that. And it's totally fine. But I charge them on demand. Or if I anticipate I'm going somewhere, I charge them the night before at a public charger. But the thing is, like, I think once you get your mind around the fact that you can, in some of the Chinese phone, in 9 minutes go from 0 to 100. Like,
it
then
changes
you're like,
things.
then you're like, okay, I'm going to take a shower and charge my phone and I'll be done. Like, and even if you have 10 minutes and you have like 100 watt, you'll charge in that 10 minutes, you can charge half, like 40% or 45% of the phone. So say you've had a long day at work, you've like used your phone a lot, you're down to 20%, but now you're going to a concert, right? Well, with this fast charging, you take that shower you want to take, you get dressed, and your phone is at 100, and you're ready to go for the night. Like, you cannot do this with an iPhone or a Samsung. Even at 45 watts, you cannot do this. And so that is why I'm kind of like, how is it that, like, and I think it's because It's complacency. It's the same reason why Samsung's folding phone aren't competitive anymore, because like they're like, well, in this market, we don't have any competition other than OnePlus, and OnePlus sells 10 phones, so we don't care, right? So now that Google has a folding phone that's actually in some ways more advanced than Samsung's, hopefully the next gen of Samsung folding phones is going to crank up the notch. Same with the Moto. Moto has finally shown Samsung, hey, we're really nipping at your heels here. Come on, get going, you know? And the complacency happens with Apple as well. I think they have no incentive. They're just trying new stuff with the camera button, but they have no incentive of really doing more than just iterating, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think sometimes they're right to be complacent. I think they're right less often than they used to be, though.
Right.
And things like that camera control button are sort of the engineers making something that was really cool and finding a reason to put it in. It starts to look like that to me.
But I also don't want them to stop. Like I want them to.
Yeah.
I don't want the hardware to be distilled to just a slab of glass with no buttons and no ports. That would be really boring, right? I mean, it'd be cool technically.
Unless you could do mind control. Brain computer interface getting better.
Neuralink for the win. Get Elon in your brain. Awesome. Yeah. So
I'm more of a fan of Synchron, but sure,
okay,
pick your BCI fan.
I know. I was just trying to make a jab here, but anyway, no. The point, you're right though. I think that I also don't want them to not do this because we're like, well, what's the use of this feature? Experimenting is good.
Yeah. No,
and
true.
I think that, it's already been announced that Oppo's flagship that's coming out in a few weeks, because it's coming out right after Snapdragon 8 Gen 4 comes out, and their schedule is been shifting forward because in China it was Chinese New Year. They want to sell their phones in advance.
Oh yeah.
It's already been confirmed. They have an action button or whatever, not action button, a camera control.
Yeah.
With a capacitive thing. So, and also they're doing the dynamic island. I mean, that's already happening on Honor phones. Like, I think, that's the thing. Like, Android at the same time copies, but also oftentimes innovates. And then it becomes a thing 5 years later on iPhones. Like,
definitely.
The folded periscope telephoto, the 5X that we got for the Pro Max last year, that's been around, on Oppo phones for 6 years now. Like the 10X telephoto folded lens, I think, was on the Oppo Reno 10X, which came out in, I want to say 2016, 17. So it's been a while. But the point is, that's par for the course, right? There's a bit of a feedback loop there, and I kind of like that, actually. But any other thoughts? I mean, actually, I want to touch on one thing, and you touched on it, and I want to get more of your thoughts on that. The incomplete software thing, right? Like Google did it too, right? We did not get our Android version update alongside our new Pixels this year.
Right.
And I'm not upset about that, but it's a fact. In the same way as Samsung did not release all of their AI features and all the features they announced in January for the S24 line until later in the year. And some of them, I think we're still waiting for some of them. And we're still waiting for some features that they announced for the Pixel 8s last year.
Oh, yeah.
I believe. And so I am not so convinced that the Apple Intelligence is going to happen this fall. Like I feel that, like Nilay said, I feel like you should be buying this phone for the AI stuff. You should be buying this phone because you need a new phone right now, or you're really excited about the camera control, or you want that bigger ultra wide, or, whatever it might be.
We've been joking that if you're on an older iPhone, you're buying a new battery and it comes with a free new phone.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah, basically. Well, there's a bit of truth to that. I think you're right. And I'm a little concerned about this trend. And this trend has been very strong in other tech products for a long time now, not necessarily hardware products. We've seen it in software a lot. And we've seen it in EVs as well, where EVs ship incomplete and we'll fix it in software later. Tesla is kind of the poster child for that. Having owned 2 Teslas myself, I don't mind. It wasn't a big deal. But at times it's been a big deal, like when they removed the ultrasonic sensors and for an entire year, people couldn't get proper backup beeping sounds and stuff because, it just wasn't there because the software was missing for it. Or the fact that the Cybertruck still doesn't have autopilot. Not full self-driving. I'm talking just basic autopilot.
Yeah.
Like this is, and I'm like, Tesla, I expect that from them. They're just, they're just like honey badgers. But like, Apple is the last company I expected that from. Like Google, I can kind of see it. We've seen glimpses of this for years now with Google. Like at least 2 or 3 years now of them announcing stuff and saying where this will come later, and it did, but it was like initially, remember the first time they did something? I think it was like a camera feature. I think it might have been like the astrophotography or something. It came
Right.
later, and we were like, what do you mean later? We were like cranky about it, right? And then now we're kind of come to accept it, but I'm just worried that like this is out of control. Like
I feel like there's two different types of these issues. And the Tesla one is one type, which is this is a feature I need. I need the backup sound, right? And why isn't it there? And then there's the features that they told us about. And psychologically, if they'd never told us about, we wouldn't miss them. And that's Apple Intelligence. If they hadn't told us this was coming, we would just be saying, doesn't seem like there's a lot of new features. And then they would, October surprise, we're giving you Apple Intelligence. So I think what they decided is let's tell people they're coming so they get excited. And it's really only the people who are paying close attention that will be disappointed that it's not there at launch. Everybody else will either get it and be like, oh, cool, I got more features, or they'll be buying it after the new features come along anyway, and it won't be a big deal. And I think I'm okay with that. I'm okay with software being shipped when it's an additional feature, not a necessary feature, but an additional feature when it's ready versus always having to tie it to new hardware launch. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
It just plays mind games with us.
I'm just worried that people are going to go out there and buy even a base iPhone 16, like because they've heard the AI features are coming and they're excited about some of them, like the, make this text message more friendly. Like, I can be super cranky in my emails to PR people sometimes. And Theo now, my spouse and producer is like always telling me, listen, you gotta wait 10 minutes. You just wait 10 minutes. But I'd love to have that on Android. I don't know if actually maybe it exists, and somebody maybe
there's
listeners
some Gemini stuff.
Let me know because I haven't played with Gemini enough. But I'd like to have an email like beautify or politify feature or friendlify, because I'm not being rude. I'm just being a little curt.
Yeah, soften the tone.
Yeah, soften the tone because I'm like out with guns blazing. But I think is those people who are buying a base iPhone expecting these AI features. That's my concern, is that they shouldn't probably be buying a base. I would, if I were you, stick with your iPhone 14, 12, 13, whatever you have, even a 15 last year, because it wasn't that great of a phone. And wait till January and buy the iPhone. Like just wait till these features actually exist. Because
especially if you're waiting on your language support, because you're not going to get that till next year anyway.
Well, yeah. And if imagine if they come out in May, are you going to buy a new iPhone in May when another iPhone is coming in September? No. Like,
I mean, people
that's
do.
Not smart. Well, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. I guess they do. I don't.
They sell iPhones.
I mean, sometimes
year-round.
you do because you have to, right? Like
I think there's just a larger percentage than we like to admit that don't pay attention at all, and they're like, I just need a new phone. My old
or they broke their phone and they
broke it, they lost it, or it's just getting old, and they're like, wow, it's my birthday's in May, so they got me a phone.
Yeah, or like something stops working and it's just not worth fixing anymore.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like I've had iPhones where the microphone stopped working or whatever, and then it was like the phone is like 4 years old. And you're like, okay, well, it's time to upgrade.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, and what I'm saying is basically I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not opposed to it, but I'm also like, and I also feel like the media, AI is just such a weird, and I know this is Apple Intelligence, not AI or, whatever.
Still AI.
It's AI. But I also know that it's like AI is a mixed bag in the eyes of a lot of people just because they don't understand it, or because the media, we've been overhyping it too much. I certainly haven't, but a lot of people have.
A lot of people have, absolutely,
in the creators world. And so that's the other reason. Like I'm really want people, especially my audience is tech savvy, but if you have somebody in your family that is not tech savvy and they're like AI, like get them to hold their horses, and they might not need to spend money on a new iPhone if they don't need a new iPhone right now.
I'm with you. Like, don't upgrade for Apple Intelligence. Don't upgrade for Gemini, for that matter.
Exactly.
Just take those as fun new features when you do need a new phone. I'm with you on that.
But the reality is Gemini runs on pretty much any Android phone with Android 15 right now. So like I have it installed on this Nothing CMF Phone 1 and it works just fine. Now, does it take advantage of the NPUs? No, because this is like a Dimensity 7300 MediaTek. It has NPUs, but they're not, I don't think that they're supported by Gemini. And on Qualcomm chips, and on Tensor chips, I think Gemini runs fine on the Pixel 8A, runs fine on the last year's Pixels, probably runs fine on 7
Yeah, I've got
Pro.
last year's Pixel Fold. It runs fine on that.
Yeah, there you go. So, and that's G2, so that's 2 generations back. So my point is like, just don't necessarily go out and buy an iPhone if you don't need it to be. Like, if your battery isn't dying and you're not super excited about the ultra wide on the Pro or the 4K 120 or the button, the camera control thing. Yeah, more than ever, hold off. Do you want to talk a little bit about the earbuds? I'm very intrigued about as a person who worked in audio and video games for many years, audio is a big part of my life. And I'm a big fan of earbuds. I try to get my hands on pretty much every earbud made. And I haven't yet ordered a pair of AirPods 4.
AirPods 4. Yeah.
And so I'm curious because, I'm a big fan of in-ear canal with silicone tips. That's kind of the way I go. I come from the world of in-ear monitors, so I'm used to that. But I think a lot of people don't like having something in the ear. And the fact that they're doing ANC and it's relatively decent from the reviews I'm reading.
That was the other surprise of the reviews.
I'm
They're like,
super tempted to just go out and buy a pair just to try that out
Just to
and
see what they
maybe
look like.
return it because I'm not sure I ever want to keep AirPods as my main. Like, I feel that the competition always does a better job. So I generally don't buy the Apple ones. I try them, but I don't buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts?
I was surprised at how well they said the active noise cancellation works in open air. I mean, they're not over the ear, they're in your ear, but they're not sealed, right?
Right, exactly.
And it sounds like they work to dampen, right? They work to keep the music. So when there's no audio playing, you're not going to get that amazing, like, oh, the world just went away kind of feeling that you get with the sealed ear. But when you do have audio playing, by all accounts, that audio sounds richer and clearer and is not drowned out by street noises. And that, to me, that's a bit of a feat of engineering to be able to make that work. And I'm like you, I'm kind of curious to try it out for myself and see, when I'm walking my dog on a busy street, does it really work as well as those reviews are saying it does?
Like, I have this rule that, I'm wearing these Sony WX, whatever, the M5s.
Mm-hmm.
These are not my travel headphones. These are my headphones. And in this location, I live in 2 homes. So I have my Bayer Dynamics at my studio, which is all set up with a good mic and everything. And this is my kind of like around the house here. And it's nice because they're very versatile because right now I'm using them wired, so I have no delays. I don't have noise canceling turned on. They're completely passive because there's no noise in my apartment. It's fine. But I also can wear them with Bluetooth and ANC. So if I have to, whatever, there's construction and I want to dampen that. But I've always found that on airplanes, like I have an XM4 pair, the previous gen, because they fold. I prefer the folding design. For travel, I keep them in my bag at all times, always charged. And I would never wear anything but those on a plane, but I see a lot of people wearing AirPods Pro with the sealed silicone tips. I see people with Samsung Buds and some people even with like OnePlus or whatever, or Nothing, which are right now, I would say that my 4 favorite brands, Apple, Samsung, Nothing, and OnePlus/Oppo. But I've tried putting just the silicone tip earbuds with good quality ones for planes, but it's not good enough for me compared to headphones. So one of the reviews I read on the AirPods 4 with noise canceling was that somebody tried them on a plane, and I'm like, I really want to know what that is like, because they said it worked. Like they said, I
use AirPods Pro on planes.
Yeah, but the 4s that are not sealed,
they're good, but I can still hear. Like, in fact, in some ways I've had the weird thing where like I can hear the person behind me talking better with noise cancellation on than I can with it off.
That's true with the Sonys as well.
Right. Yeah. So when you don't even have the sealed ear.
Yeah. That's why I almost want to buy a pair and I fly all the time because, commuting to cities, whatever.
Yeah.
Plus all my car travel for my car work. And it's like, I'm like, I want to see how effective that really is because
me too.
Maybe I should, because it's been 2 or 3 years.
You're talking me into buying some AirPods 4 now just to try them out and return them too.
I also, it's making me realize also like, I kind of made a decision 2-3 years back that I would always wear the headphones instead of the silicone tips ANC earbuds on planes because the ANC earbuds weren't quite as good, but I'm wondering if that's evolved now. I should reevaluate using my new Galaxy Buds Pro, using my new OnePlus Buds Pro, Yeah, I think that's probably worth a story or something. I should look into it. But I think
there's something there because I rely on them and they're fine.
yeah,
They work really well.
I'm intrigued by those AirPods for the first time in a long time. Also because they finally fixed the sound quality. It sounds like because the Pros have always sounded great and the Max have always sounded great, but the original, even all the updates to the original AirPods up to now have always been kind of like cringy for me. I'm like,
yeah.
Especially coming from Apple, because they know how to do audio. If you've ever listened to a recording made with a MacBook,
Yeah.
like the studio mics are unbelievable. Like you're a pro podcaster. You're like me. You understand this. You've edited your own stuff. Like you listen to it and you're like, holy crap, this is good.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah. I'll have guests that use that built-in mic and you can tell when like, oh, you're on a MacBook. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's immediately better than just a regular laptop of some kind.
For sure.
So yeah, I'm super excited about overall this Apple stuff. I think overall they've done some good things. I don't want you guys to think, that you shouldn't buy an iPhone or that Apple is complacent. To some extent they are, and maybe they're looking for the next thing by adding these hardware improvements that are questionable, but I also don't want the fact that they're questionable to be the reason for them not to continue trying new things, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what I'm saying. Like, I applaud them trying, and especially because they're finally doing hardware changes again, because in the past, it's always been software things like AI. But at the same time, I'm like, use your judgment because you might not need them and you might be better off. I do believe, honestly, that Apple has a big dilemma with the fact that they make such good phones that last so long, they update for so long, other than a battery, which can, by the way, be relatively cheaply replaced at an Apple store. Keep that in mind. If you have a 2-year-old iPhone, the battery starts, you might not need a new iPhone. $99 or whatever it is for a battery fully installed is a very reasonable price.
Especially if they can do it same day. I think a lot of people worry like, oh, I'm going to have to be without my phone. They do them really fast.
They do them really fast. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically Apple in a nutshell. Other news this week. Let's start with the spectacles, because that's kind of like, it's not a product that you and I can really buy, but I'm excited about. I'm excited about it.
I don't know if I'd want to. I have to apply for the right to pay $1,200.
Yeah,
it's $99 a month. I don't have to pay all $1,200 at once. But yeah, these are developer only glasses, and I think a lot of people you'd be forgiven for not knowing that Snap was still making spectacles. But yeah, these are the 5th version.
I think the 4th gen, and I think starting with the 3rd gen or something, they went to developer only.
Yeah.
I think they're basically trying to, they want to do what we all want to see, which is a pair of glasses that looks like this, that has AR features and has, cameras and microphones and enhances your life like a wearable, like a smartwatch does, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we can't really do that with today's tech. So
instead you get gigantic spectacles.
Yeah, but instead you get what the technology can do today for developers, because ultimately if developers can create some use cases that are compelling, and then over time the technology shrinks, we'll get to that. And then we'll actually have some use for it. It won't just be like, look, we made a pair of glasses, and then like, what do you do with it, right? And so I've never been a big fan of Snapchat or Snap as a company or Evan as a person or whatever. Like, I've always been kind of like dismissive about the whole thing. But I have to give them credit for trying. And I think I prefer AR to VR myself. I think AR has a better chance to succeed.
Yeah, or mixed, where you can do
MR.
some VR when you need to, but yeah.
Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm more excited about that simply because of that. Instead of like Meta's, work on
the Ray-Bans
VR or like who else is doing VR a lot right now? Well, Apple Vision Pro, right?
Vive, HTC just came out with a brand new one.
I'm not really too like, that's why I'm like, okay, this spectacle announcement's got me intrigued, because now I kind of want to look at what's changing the hardware, like, because Qualcomm has been really pushing their XR platform, which is basically what they're using for that. Yeah. So anyway, it's not a consumer product, but it is intriguing.
It is intriguing, and I wonder at what point we get the merging of the two paths. And I know there's more than two, but in this case, we got Snap making these very large. Look, they're not heavy apparently, but they're very large spectacles for developers to make better lenses, essentially, and AR stuff for Snap. And then you've got Meta making the Ray-Bans, which by all accounts, the second version that they're making
Oh, it's
are better.
awesome. Yeah, everybody that has them
And they
loves
work
them.
really
I almost
well.
bought my own pair, but I'm
But
just
they're
like,
limited. They're limited.
Exactly.
It's the voice assistant and the video and the image capture and like, hey, what am I looking at kind of thing. That they're taking we're going to do what we can do with what we can put in a normal pair of glasses, which is limited. And Snap's doing we're going to do what we think we can do eventually in a normal pair of glasses, but we're not going to worry about the form factor.
Right. And I think in that sense, Meta is a better product. And it obviously, like, you can have it now, and it's got it's a single use kind of product, but a very good use. And they've refined that use case. And, unlike, I think their Quest, Oculus, whatever products that, I mean, they're cool, but
they're niche.
They're very niche.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. Like, I think I could see them selling a lot more of those Ray-Bans, especially as they improve them.
Yeah, and they just renewed their deal with SR Luxottica, so they're going to keep making Ray-Ban versions of them.
Awesome.
It seems like everybody's enjoying it.
I want to see other brands too, like other of the Luxottica, whatever they're called, brand like glasses. I don't know. Do they have like Chanel or Celine or whatever? I don't know.
Who is under SR?
So many. I don't even know.
Yeah, it's.
We can look it up.
I'm gonna do a quick.
Yeah, you do it. Go for it. Let's find out. Like
Oakley is under them.
Oh, well, look at that.
Yeah. Hut. Oakley and Ray-Ban are their two highest end from this quick look anyway.
Right. Well, there you go. Oakley. Yeah. Like have like the visor style, like the kind of tech pro glasses.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Then they have licensing deals with Versace, Michael Kors, Prada, Coach. So yeah, you could get some Dolce and Gabbana.
There you go, Dolce and Gabbana, Versace. That we're talking now. Yeah. I know it'd be interesting because also there's this kind of influencer aspect here that they could really like leverage. If they had a Versace branded version, I bet you they could get a lot of.
Oh yeah.
Especially with an Instagram partnership of some kind, like they could really have something going there. So I don't know. I'm excited about this, and that's why I put it in. Like initially, I was like, it's a new pair. Oh no, it's developers. Oh, look at that thing. It's not really, it looks very dorky. And I didn't realize it was not. I was like, what are they doing? But now it makes a lot more sense, but I still think it's exciting. All right. The next item we have on the table is kind of cool too. And it's the GM stuff. So, okay. As you know, so you probably know, but the audience might not know. I mean, my audience, we do talk about EVs pretty regularly here, but it's not the main topic of conversation. It's because I'm a fan and it's a bit of a hobby of mine, but of course also a bit of a job thing because I review EVs and car tech. But Supercharger access is coming slowly to other companies and Tesla, EV makers that make EVs that are not Tesla. So the first one was Ford. Well, over a year ago, Ford and GM were the first one to strike an agreement with Tesla to access the network. And then after that, everybody else followed suit kind of thing. But in practice, like actually executing this thing, there was first Ford, and that was a few months back, like I think in the spring. And then we had Rivian shortly thereafter. And then it's been, kind of quiet on the battlefront for quite a while. Now, part of the reason for that is because Elon had a fit and fired a big chunk of the Supercharger team at one point. Apparently 80% of the people have been rehired. This is kind of insider speculation that I'm hearing from a lot of people in the industry, which is good news for them. But also some people got hired at other companies. So I think we might see better charging in other networks because they got hired by other networks. But the bottom line is GM was definitely going to be one of the early ones because they signed on early, yet it wasn't happening. So, yesterday they issued a press release, and it's a done deal. If you have a General Motors EV, all the newer ones like Chevy Equinox EV, Blazer EV, Silverado EV, the pickup truck, the Hummers, all the Cadillac EVs, the Celestiq and the Lyriq, you will get a software update, and then you will have to sign up so that your account adds the Supercharger network for payment, right? So that you can do the transaction. And in order for you to sign up to be able to do the transaction, you need to buy the adapter. And so whereas Ford and Rivian gave away the adapter for free for the first month, GM is charging you. So, and they say that you will void your warranty if you don't use their adapter. Okay, so that's kind of why I think this is an interesting topic, because here's my inside thought. You're going to be fine if you use other adapters. Just don't buy some Chinese, like, no-name brand. Buy A2Z. They're a very reputable Canadian brand that sells adapters for all kinds of electric stuff, and they've got a good reputation. Electron is another brand that you can trust. Like, now they're not going to be cheaper than the adapters from GM or Ford or Rivian, which, by the way, are all not made necessarily, but certified and engineered by Tesla, and then made by either Tesla or third-party suppliers. So I'm just saying, don't try to save money here. But because of availability is going to be difficult, you could use a third-party adapter if you can't find in stock the adapter you need. But apparently GM will somehow block you from joining the system, basically, unless you buy their adapter. So it's an upfront cost of like $220 or something, which is a bit of a hassle. I don't know why that's just like putting a hurdle on something that's really, really helpful. Like, you're getting 17,500 superchargers. Like, that's a lot. And like, that's instantly more than doubling your ability to charge publicly, in terms of quantity. So
it makes me wonder how much of a stake GM has in EVgo, or one of the,
No, I think the reason is because I think what happened is Tesla could not, initially for Rivian and Ford, my understanding is that Tesla is the one who made the adapters, and they couldn't pump them out fast enough. They just didn't have and so a lot of Ford and Rivian people were kind of like upset, because they're like, well, I want to be able to supercharge, and you promised me a free adapter, and I signed up for it and I'm ready to go, but I can't charge. And Rivian and Ford are like, we can't Tesla can't make them fast enough for us. So I think GM wanted to avoid that and have Tesla engineer. It's the same box, but they have a supplier of GM making it for them.
Got it.
And I think because of that, they're like, but it's costing us a lot of money to have this supplier ramp up production on this bespoke part. So we're just going to, and also we want to make sure that we don't have any warranty issues with third-party adapters. So how about I still think they should have given them away for free.
And it slows down demand, so they're not
exactly.
They're not in that position.
I think they should have given them away for free for sure. But the bottom line is, I've talked to a whole bunch of people that got the software updates. Some people have been able to charge with third-party adapters, but they have to use a Tesla app to pay instead of being built in. And that what I'm talking about is, to order access to the built-in stuff, you need to buy the adapter officially from GM. That's, gotcha. I mean, well, stay tuned, because I think it's going to be interesting to see how this develops. Also, I'm getting a Cadillac Lyriq. When is it? Like in 2 weeks or something. So I've got all the adapters. So I'll be getting the official one from GM to try from the press people. And then I have the other two, the Electron and the A2Z. So I'll be able to check it out without having to spend money and tell you what it looks like. And I'm not the only one.
Let Miriam void her warranty. Don't void yours.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't care. It's a press car. I'll fiddle. I mean, I've used Ford and Rivian's with the A2Z adapter. The Electron adapter is brand new. It was announced yesterday. So I don't know. But some people have had early access to the Electron. Some EV YouTube reviewers like Tom Maloney have had access, and they've tested it and said it works just fine. There's no issues. So, all I'm saying is, this is exciting because you can now road trip in your EV. I mean, you've always been able, there's this myth that you can't road trip in an EV, but it's actually not that hard, folks. I wrote an entire article on Tech Radar about that. Basically walking you through, no matter, Tesla is trivial, right? You can get a Tesla today and just punch in a destination and it'll take you there, and you don't really have to worry about a thing. Unless you're going some super remote place, you pretty much guaranteed that there'll be a way to get there on their network. But it's not the case with all the other EVs. So I wrote a primer, basically, this is how you do it if you have a non-Tesla EV. And so check that out. So don't worry about road tripping in an EV. It's not a big deal. But now it's even less of a big deal if you have a Ford or Rivian or a GM vehicle. And very, very strong rumors are floating around right now that Polestar and Volvo are next up. We're talking days, potentially just a few weeks. So that excites me a lot because they make some of the best EVs. So, right now, really, in the Gates scheme of EV land, at least for what's available outside of China, Tesla's still at the top, even though, I can't stand Elon, and I've had many Teslas myself. They still make, in my opinion, the best EVs. Then there's Rivian, of course, fantastic. Lucid, great. but Lucid doesn't have supercharger access yet. Ford does a very good job. The Koreans, which all share the same platform, Genesis, Kia, and Hyundai have the eGMP platform. Amazing cars. All of them are great. I'm not talking about Kona or talking about their cars that only exist as EVs. So the Kona exists as a hybrid and a gas car as well. So just be mindful of that on the Korean side. Awesome. And then you've got, Mercedes doing a decent job, although their cars don't look really good. But that's why I'm like GM getting access. Some of their cars are pretty great. I think the Blazer's a solid car. I think the Silverado EV, if you want a super long range pickup truck that can actually tow for quite a distance, if you're into it, not my thing, but if you're into it, you get the Hummer.
Sure.
You can like the least efficient EV on the planet. But I think it's exciting to see this access to superchargers for non-Tesla EVs. It really opens up the industry. And I know there's a bit of a lull right now in the minds of people about EVs, and people are prioritizing hybrids and plug-in hybrids and stuff. But a lot of that is driven by what media is saying. It's not the reality out there. There's incredibly good lease deals right now. If you're looking at buying an EV and you're undecided because of range and road trip and stuff, that's the range is most EVs now have 250 or more, and that's 250, 300 is what you need. You don't need more than that. Most gas cars don't do more than 300 range. Like, of course, you can pull up at any gas station. I know, I get it. But I'm just saying, like, don't think that way. Think about what you can actually practically do. And then the charging infrastructure, once you get supercharger access, it's game over. You're good to go. But then there is the whole thing around, like, it's too expensive. You can get leases right now for absolutely incredible deals, Yeah. And yes, leases bind you in terms of the number of miles you can drive a year. But for most people who drive maybe 10,000 miles a year, it's perfectly fine to lease. You're not going to go over that limit very easily, even if you throw in a couple of road trips a year. So,
and don't forget the lower maintenance costs too.
Yeah, that's the thing.
People don't
right?
count that a lot.
Absolutely. As soon as you add a gas engine, that's why the hybrids are so compromised to me. Like a hybrid gas non-plug-in is fine because it's just essentially a gas car that's more efficient. Like it's not an electric car. It's just a gas car. It's more efficient because it's got some electrification to help it. But a plug-in hybrid I wrote an article about that. Like I don't understand the point of it because you're just carrying around, if you're running electric, you're carrying around a gas engine and a gas tank and extra weight. If you're running on gas only because you're depleted the battery, you're carrying on a heavy battery and a motor that do nothing. And if you can't charge at home, some people, like many of us can't, I can't, then you're kind of screwed because you can't get that EV range. And then on top of that, you still have the maintenance, you still have oil changes, you still have everything. I was like, why? Yeah. And it's more expensive on top of that. In fact, most plug-in hybrids are about the same price as the equivalent EV. So why bother? So yeah, good lease deals right now. And so, but I would say prioritize, obviously Tesla, if you can. Well, I personally don't want to give my money to Elon anymore, but if you're okay with that, also maybe buy a used Tesla. That way you don't feel too bad. It's you get it for half price, and you're not really paying Elon because he's already been paid. And then definitely look at the ones that can do supercharging. Ford, General Motors, Rivian, if you can afford it, they make fantastic vehicles. They're a bit big though. And then if Polestar and Volvo get it, I really want the Koreans to get it though. If the Koreans get supercharging, oh my God. So that's kind of basically where we're at. And this is why this GM story is pretty exciting. Have you got an EV?
I don't.
Are you looking at getting an EV?
Yeah, we've been, that's probably the next time we need a car. We hold on to our cars forever.
We're
not terribly into the cars. We have a 2011 Audi and a 2014 Honda.
You get the two opposite ends there. You have the reliability, maximum reliability versus, needs a lot of attention and love, but is fantastically fun to drive. German stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got it.
And we're getting to the point where we're going to have to replace the Audi, and it's going to be an EV. And we've been looking at the Hyundai actually as a potential. So
I would guess that the fact that we're getting GM and very strong rumors that Polestar and Volvo are following means that Kia, Hyundai, Genesis were pretty late in announcing their partnership with Tesla, but I think we might see it before the end of the year. Because what I think is happening is the Supercharge team has been replenished enough that they kind of function again. And so the deals are going through now. Yeah. And I think we're going to start seeing a bit of a landslide of deals happening. And I'm telling you, if you can get a Korean EV with Supercharger access, you are in extremely good shape.
Yeah. And for us, we probably would just be driving it around town anyway. So the Supercharger access is not going to be as big of a
It's
deal
just
for a
that
while.
perk, right? It's just
Yeah,
that
yeah. It's a nice thing, nice to have. Yeah.
knowing that comfortable, quiet, fast, relatively to a gas car vehicle you just spent quite a bit of money on can actually be used for that one road trip you do where you drive from, like LA to San Francisco, or
Yeah,
even
right.
LA to like Seattle. It's
Or
totally
Las Vegas.
like anything up and down I-5 is a total walk in the park. Currently, even if you don't have supercharger access, but if you
other than having to drive on the 5, but the Supercharger
right. No,
access
but
is a
actually,
walk in the park. Yeah.
the 5 in the north, like anything north of Reading is absolutely gorgeous.
Not
So
so
you
bad.
only have the half, if you're driving from LA to Seattle, only half of it is boring.
Right.
But my point is that the amount of supercharger is so plentiful that as a former Tesla owner, having done this trip as recently as like 2 months ago in my own Tesla, I just gave it up in July, the lease ended. It's to the point where you can actually be picky about which supercharger you want to stop at because you know there's a Target there, or you know there's that one coffee shop you really like. Like you can actually be like, you know what? You told me to go to this one, but there's one 10 miles later that I actually like better because they have that, cool taco truck that I like,
That's great.
And it's when you get to that point, you're like, okay, like when you can be picky about where you charge, I think you've arrived. So yeah. A couple of more items on the list today. So the Nothing Ear Open have been kind of announced at IFA briefly by a little event they had that I attended. Basically, these are the open, similar to the AirPods 4
non-sealed
earbuds from Nothing. It's their second. They've done a non-silicone tip version that didn't have ANC before. Now, I don't know if these have ANC, like we don't know any info, but if you are into Nothing earbuds, which as you know, I'm a big fan, they make some of the best earbuds. The Open are coming on September 24th. So we should know more. I will be getting a device. It's on its way. And if it has ANC, I'd be curious to let you know how it works out. And then I'm definitely going to buy a pair of AirPods 4 to compare because I'd like to know if this is becoming a thing, Tom, that we can buy non-silicone tips ANC earbuds.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Is that a trend? What is it that you like about Nothing's earbuds? Sound
quality, fit. I mean, basically, they're not the best at anything, but they're really affordable. Like their top of the line one, the ear, third gen ear, just ear with no bracket next to them, are less, I think $150, and they blow away like AirPods Pro 2. They blow away, like they basically, they hold their own against like the Galaxy Bud 3 Pro, which I think are probably the best right now, or the OnePlus Buds Pro 3, which are also like up there now. So basically what I'm saying is that you have like for a lot less money, like $100 to $50 less, you're getting the same level of performance on ANC, battery life. You get possibly better sound depending on what kind of sound signature you like. Everything's tunable. They all have EQ that stays in the earbud, so it's fine. But out of the box, I feel like they sound really good. And then they're very lightweight and their fit is really, really comfortable. Plus, they look super cool because they're translucent. You can see all the electronics.
Nothing
in there
is really good with the design.
Yeah,
for sure.
And then honestly, my favorite ones are the Ear A. I'm doing the bracket sign for those of you not watching on Patreon. Those are even $50 cheaper and give you 90% of the experience of the Ear 3, but with a price reduction. And you lose wireless charging, which is not a huge deal, but you also gain, basically you have almost the same earbuds, and like you get $50. And they come in this crazy yellow color that is like super awesome. So I'd find myself wearing them, those ones, the yellow ones, more than the actual higher end, more expensive ones, simply because they're almost the same. And I don't really use the wireless charging for my buds very often. So yeah. And then, OnePlus has done some pretty good stuff, especially with their latest Pro 3 models. And Samsung, I think, is really, I don't find the Samsung fit as well for me. I find that their design's a little ugly. Like, everybody now has copied Apple, but like Nothing and OnePlus are doing a good job at it, but like the Galaxy Buds look a little weird to me.
I feel like the Galaxy Buds are really just to sell to the person buying a Samsung that day.
That's exactly what it is. And they're generally bundled in anyway.
Exactly.
They have really great sound quality, the Samsung Buds, but it's that they're a bit clinical to me. Like they like you put them on, you're like, wow. And you can tune them and you're happy with the sound, but then as you start listening for a longer time, they're a bit more fatiguing. Whereas the OnePlus and the Nothing, kind of like you put them on and they're good, you tune them, but then you can listen to them for 4 hours and feel like no fatigue. Like they're just, and I'm not talking about fatigue from fit, I'm talking about audio fatigue, right? And I think in that sense, the Samsungs are probably slightly better, but they just kind of wow you at first, and then you kind of like, I wish it wasn't so harsh here and there, and I can't tune that out. And then, whereas I guess it's a comparison. Like, I know it's a cliche because these are things that most people can't hear, but it's a cliche of, in the early days of CD players, people said CDs sounded great, but they sounded a little harsh. And then they kind of like the warm analog sound of records.
Right.
Like, I feel like the tuning on the OnePlus and the Nothing is more like that analog tuning, whereas the tuning on the Samsung is more of a digital kind of harsher sound. Gotcha. And you can EQ some of that. I'm not just talking about I'm talking about the general color of the driver, because you can tune stuff with EQ, but you can never quite get rid of like the personality of the driver, right?
Yeah, there's a limit to what
you can tune. So yeah, Nothing ear open coming soon. Keep an eye out of that. And then finally, we got 2 new phones from, the Chinese brand, Tecno this week. Folding phones. We got Phantom V Fold 2, that's it, and a V Flip 2. And those are pretty affordable. $699 for the Flip, which is like the flip phones from Samsung and the Motorola ones. And then the Fold is $1099, which is the cheapest or most affordable at least MSRP.
It's like almost half.
Book style folding phone. And it's like really impressive, to be honest with you. I have not played with them extensively, but the previous generation I got my hands on, I think was it IFA or MWC? It was MWC. And honestly, like, there's nothing wrong with them. They were a little clunky, but this year they're thinner. So last year they were clunky, and that's where you could see where the money was saved, like they were heavy and clunky, thick and stuff. But now the specs look like they're pretty much on par with the competition, like our Pixel Fold that we use, the new one. And so that's pretty exciting to see. And, their software on those Infinix and Tecno phone is always a little weird because it's Chinese, it's Chinese brand. But their hardware has always been pretty solid, in my opinion. So if you're in a market where they sell and they support your bands and stuff, like say you're in Africa or the Middle East or India or like Eastern Europe, where they're very popular as well, like by all means, check them out. They're going to be in your stores pretty soon. And I'm trying to get my hands on them. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I feel like Transcend, which makes the Tecno, has been very underrated because they're so focused on Africa. And this feels a little bit like them trying to raise their hand to get some attention, because these are really good looking phones.
Yeah, I had one of their Tecno flagships like a year and a half ago that had like a crazy camera that popped out, like kind of like like how the point and shoot cameras have the little lens that pops out.
Oh yeah, right.
Something like that. Didn't pop out as much, just a little bit for the telephoto. And that thing was really, really quite impressive. So they definitely are going a higher end. They started out very mid-range in the early days, and now here we are. So that's basically the news we got for you this week. Tom, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, all your various shows and your social media handle and all that, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, my social media handle is ridiculous. It's Ace Detect, ACEDTECT. Just look up Tom Merritt, though. You'll probably find me. I'm on Threads and Blue Sky and Mastodon and X and all of them. And the show that people are probably going to be most interested in, if they haven't found it already, if you're listening to this, is Daily Tech News Show. It's Monday through Friday. Myself and Sarah Lane and Rob Dunwood bring you the stuff that we think is important for understanding technology every day of the week. We bring folks on to chat about it. You can find that at dailytechnewsshow.com.
It is awesome, folks. I mean, Tom's been doing this forever. My podcast is actually 7 years old, so I think really I should have said that I wanted to have you on for 7 years now.
Yeah, I guess you couldn't have had me on before you had the podcast.
You were a legend back in the day already. So it's like this show, guys, is one you should absolutely listen to and subscribe to. And then you make a whole bunch of other shows too that are really kind of fun, right?
Yeah. I do a science fiction and fantasy podcast still with Veronica Belbon called Sword and Laser. If you're into television and movies, we do like a cord cutting oriented show that Brian Brushwood and I do, Cord Killers. And then I do like a single topic deep dive show called Know a Little More. And I can't stop. It's become a lifelong obsession to do shows.
That you do a daily show, yet you have other shows. Like I do a weekly show and I barely survive, between that and my writing.
It's an illness. Don't catch it.
There's one URL you have where you can find everything, right?
Yep. TomMerritt.com. 2 R's, 2 T's.
Awesome. So folks, check it out. Also subscribe to the YouTube channels and follow Tom on the social. And you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgrl. That's TNKGRL. Like the comic book character, just drop the vowels. And you get my handle on pretty much everything. Twitter, Threads, Insta, Blue Sky. I'm not on Mastodon, but pretty much everywhere else. So, follow me and you can chat with me and Tom and comment on this podcast on social. And then the podcast itself is at mobiletechpodcast.com. And you can subscribe on all the big platforms. We're available everywhere. So please tell your friends, please subscribe if you're here for the first time, and rate or review the show if the app that you use lets you rate or review. I'd appreciate that. There's a YouTube channel as well where I do some unboxing, some hands-ons, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. You know how YouTube works. So subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment. You can comment about the episodes as well. I'm happy to answer questions there. And then, of course, there's a Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL, just like my Twitter handle or whatever. So patreon.com/Tankgrl. You can get a video version of this podcast where we sometimes show phones and you can see our faces, and there's extra content. Sometimes if you go over time, there's bloopers, fun stuff like that. The FedEx guy showing up just in the middle of the podcast, all that fun stuff. So if you want to help me out, it's weekly. Of course, you get a show every week. You get it usually about a day in advance, and it's on video. And then you get the public audio version that drops like about, a few hours later, basically. So consider helping out. $5 a month gives you every episode. And that's basically it. There's other tiers there for other things but basically that's the gist of it. So consider helping me out with Patreon. Patreon.com/TNKGRL. And if you don't want to do Patreon, there's a PayPal link in the show notes. Look at the show notes, click on the PayPal link, and you can donate me a coffee if you want, because I like my coffee. Look at the sunshine. It's coming. Ooh. So consider all that. And I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you again, Tom, for joining me this week. Thanks for being my guest.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Miriam.
Fantastic. We'll definitely have you on the show again. And folks, we'll have another show next week, so stay tuned for that. Until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.